Hi, people. Good evening, good day, good whatever, and welcome to Citizens Duty video blog. And this is my second release. It's dedicated to media bias. Let me remind you that in the previous issue, in the first release, we spoke about biases in general and about information, about sources of information. And we have established that this idea that a good citizen means a well-informed citizen. Because if you are ill-informed, if you don't know what's going on around, how can you make valid and reasonable decisions about as a voter, as a person who participates in the life of your society. You need to know what's going on. You need to be informed, and that's why it's so important to be informed, right? And here we also established that there are different media sources, different information sources. Our information is coming from it has many layers, and our understanding of every episode or aspect of the reality around us usually is multifaceted. There is something very deep and fundamental about every event, let's say, of politics, and there are some kind of current events. For example, I don't know, we talk about whatever, elections. So there are ideas of voting, of democracy, of how it works, whether it is important or not to participate in this. And then there are this ton of information about current events, like who are the candidates and everything associated with them. So it's like a pyramid with some fundamental things at the bottom and some very current and very kind of hot and very actual information on top. The bottom, the foundation of our comprehension of the life of a society comes from books, comes from upbringing, from our parents, from the school, from all sort of different and very diverse sources. And yeah, it's a fundamental stuff. We're talking here about values, we're talking about our priorities in life, what we consider important and less important, and so on and so forth. And then on top of this cake, there are this current news, current information about these particular people we're talking about, and this is primarily coming from media. It's not most deep and most even important but it's very current information, and it's very actual, very hot, and it's coming solely from the media. And that's why the role of media is so important. And today we will talk about media biases and how omnipresent they are. But before we skip to the media part of it, I'd like to first focus on the bias as such. We know what it is. It's basically when you support one or another side or idea in a dispute, when you're it's like coming from philosophy with the ideas of objective and subjective perception of the world. So basically biased is another word for subjective vision of things and comprehension of things, while objective is supposedly not biased view or coverage is like our ideal that we want to strive for. It's considered to be morally superior, like the search for truth. But is it possible at all? And I think if we just stop for a second, think about it, it's instantly clear that objective perception of the world is not possible. Why? Well, first of all, our knowledge is very limited, and this objectivism requires from you to be completely informed. So one needs to have like 100% of information about certain event or person to build some objective mm, mm, idea about opinion about this. But it's even worse than that, since all the facts of the universe connected with one another this way or another, you really need to know just like everything, like literally everything, to have this totally unbiased and totally objective perception of all the events. In other in other words, it's only possible for someone like God and not for humans. Unfortunately, our perception is very limited. We look in the world through this like little holes kind of and see a very little fragment of it. So our knowledge is incomplete by definition. We are our opinions are impacted by many different reasons and many different considerations. We have our personal vested interest in this or another situation. We support certain ideas. We have our preferences. We have all sort of considerations why we choose one side over another side and why we prefer this and prefer not that. So we are very far from being objective in that sense. In other words, our comprehension of the world is biased. That's it. And so is true about our colleagues, friends, and neighbors, and about media professionals who are also humans, about literally everyone, about politicians. They're only humans. They also have their personal interests and their personal views and their biased perception of the world. That's why it's totally impossible to reach this objectivity in the real life. We can only strive for it, and even that is very nice if we try to be honest, if we try to be fair, and if we try to be objective. And so that's all we can do. And now the second part of it is media. So it cannot be objective, as we just established, because it's something done by people. Basically, there are people behind it with all the limitations. But there are other reasons too, of course. Let's think for a second. Let's think media organization. What does it do? Who does it serve? And why does it produce their product, the news, for example? What can be the motivations? What can be the reasons behind this activity? Why would anybody work to inform you and me, I don't know, us? Well, on the surface, of course, money. That's, I think, we live in this market economies. Everybody have to survive somehow. So yes, people make their living. It's their occupation, their profession. And then, of course, it's business, and it can generate very serious profits. So obviously, money making is here, and in their world of democracies, of liberal democracy, we see of capitalism, we see how media corporations work as businesses. Their business models are quite transparent. They receive money, for example, for advertising. They sell their product, their news, and so on. So they generate profits. That's one very solid reason for them to do it. Another one reason, obviously, media has a huge influence over people, and it's a platform where you can, if you are there, you can project your views, your values onto quite seriously big numbers of other people. And it's a very attractive possibility. Like right now, I'm talking I see two people right now here, and this Facebook thing shows me I'm very happy. I talked to two people. Hi, people. I don't know who you are. So hi. Now imagine you talk to like 2 million people. That's something you can even do over time to reach such an audience. So another motive possibly behind this work is mission, like people who have certain views, who are strongly supporting certain ideas. They want to reach out and push their views onto others. And I can totally relate to that. It makes total sense to me. And then, of course, there are some more hidden motivations, like collaboration with some powerful organizations, with the governments, and some cooperation, building up certain narratives, and then of course advertising. Oh, well, it falls into money making activity, right? But just to emphasize that media pushes certain products, certain ideas, support candidates, for example, in election, and that's another way to say they advertise, basically. So all sort of different motivations here, and then maybe somewhere under the number, I don't know, 29, you will find, yes, they inform people about what's going on. Well, I think for a second, do you think it's like the main thing they do, the main thing they work for? Honestly, I have a very serious doubt about it. Well, I wouldn't waste my time to inform you people, but I would waste my time, spend my time with, like, in a very productive way to share my views. That's different. That's different. Another way, what I'm trying to say here is that media as an organization, as a business, has lots of goals that have nothing to do with informing people, and these goals themselves affect their product, what they offer us. Their motivations really forge what they finally produce to us. So it's not the truth. They are not interested in producing the, well, sometimes they are, and sometimes they are not. It can be this way or another. Sometimes it's profitable to sell the truth. Yeah, can be. Or it can be your mission sometimes to deliver the truth. Yeah, it can be, of course. But sometimes and oftentimes it's not. And when you see money on the table, it's like screws everything. So of course media is biased. Of course it's biased twice, just as I pointed at. It's biased because it's made by human in the first place, but by us, by people who are just like us. Well, they're media professionals, but they're just people anyway. They don't know much. How many I don't know how many New York Times is the biggest, like, newspaper, very famous brand, but how many correspondents they have on the ground in Syria? Like, maybe someone sits in Baghdad, I don't know, like one, two, one. It's the whole country. How many people they have in China or in Russia? Maybe one in Moscow, in Beijing. Most newspapers don't have even that. They report, they basically chew and redo the same reporting coming from a small bunch of journalists that feed like Reuters. I read some 3 big hubs that collect all the data and then distribute to the whole big bunch of different newspapers. So truth, what truth? Yes, and another interesting source of a bias is this selectivity. You see, the world is big and there's so much happening, like at every moment simultaneously. You possibly can't cover everything. It's impossible. The God can, we cannot. So we have to select. We come out of different, like, agendas, and like someone, for example, loves dogs and doesn't care about anything else. So they make a dog newspaper that only writes about dogs. And that's already a bias, kind of harmless one, but it's a specialization, so to speak. And someone only wants to write about how Donald Trump is a very bad person. That's the same thing. There's so much to say about even one single person. even such a limited in many ways person as Donald Trump. There are a lot of sides to him. After all, he is the president of the United States still, and he does a lot of things, involved with a lot of things. You can turn it this way and that way, but someone wants to see just one side of it and present it to us endlessly. That's called bias, or some opposite way, doesn't matter. So media is biased by definition, and it's very important to know. And to close up on media, I just want to offer you one short phrase, or what it's called, like aphorisms. Yes, I made up it myself, and I'm super proud of it. I think it's very, very smart of me to come up with that. So it goes like this: in the time of peace, information is a commodity, and it's a mighty weapon in a war. Think about it, how deep, right? And it's not Mark Twain, it's Marx. So yeah, well, right, yes, you can sell with information, you can generate huge profits, you advertise, you push your product, your ideas. And when it's war, you instantly turn into a propaganda cannon and you shoot the enemy. That's it. This is what media is all about. And by the way, I want to point your attention, this is equally correct even about independent, so to speak, media. Well, it is about alternative media, about these truth seekers, because no matter how truth seeker you are, you have only this like pair of eyes, relatively small brain, and basically you can only cover this much, and the world is a bit bigger. So you have to focus, you have to filter, you have to specialize very narrowly, and you can't afford the luxury of spreading yourself too thin. So your information channel will be another one, like laser thin spear, that only covers, only hits certain painful spots, only covers certain aspects, and it has no space, no room, for example, for some alternative information. And that's why all this opposition media, why I hate oppositions usually, is because they're like oppositions. They just basically go against the mainstream and do nothing more. It's always negativism against and always criticism. So, and it's the same in every country. Like in Russia, for example, we have Russian. They have, but I read. I am Russian, by the way, and I speak. It's my native language. So they have the opposition, rotten one, because all it does, it basically bashes the government day and night for all sort of made up and maybe sometimes real reasons, valid reasons and totally crappy reasons. It's all mixed up. So one can't even say, sometimes the criticism is valid, but when you never say a good thing about something, well, it's like, oh, these guys, they're always in a position. They're always, no matter what you do, they're always finding something to say it's bad. Well, it's counterproductive. It doesn't help really, and it makes them not very credible. And so goes with many other channels internationally and so on. So it's difficult. I mean, ideally, a media channel is trying to create some balanced view, at least, of that fragment of reality they're covering. But even that is super rare in our time. Today, I made a quick look at the front page of Washington Post, just their website. I just only scanned their headlines. You can do yourself. It's a fucking propaganda machine. Sorry, me. It's a propaganda machine, because they just basically everything has like a pinch of salt covering certain very narrow spectrum of things, and particularly focused on one character, guess who. In that sense, Fox News today, I don't follow Fox News, never, and I visited them maybe 5 times in my life, so I can't say what have they been before. And today they actually made a better impression on me. Yes, balanced, more balanced, no certainty. But this is, I guess, only because they are defeated. Their go party, their Trump, whatever is defeated, so they don't know what to say. So they're kind of, kind of diverse and less kind of pushing, while Washington Post are the winner and they are kind of represent the winning side of the conflict, and they just there to finish up the enemy who is already on the ground spread, and they just that's what they do. uh, that's basically it. That's all what I wanted to say about media bias. And now in this part of my talk, uh, you can switch off, by the way. I would understand, because now kind of I am going to improvise. I'm talking to you like we are sitting in a bar now. I'd like to try to expose my own biases. On one example, the case study will be Trump, American politics, Trump, and how it's seen by, no, well, from my side. I use it only as a case study. I will try to show you how my own biases define my positions, and how, like, it's all very interconnected, because it really depends on where you come from, how you see certain things. So Trump, let's try to talk. But I haven't thought about it very much, so it's not going to be a super smooth talk, I'm afraid. I will be thinking as I talk, so excuse me, please, for that. So what about it? Okay, first of all, I've been in the United States of America, New York City, once in my life, and it was quite a long time ago, around 2000. I was working in an America summer camp. It was a Jewish camp. It was a very interesting experience. And I spent there 2 months working with children, and then about 1 month in New York City. And of course, I was on the top of Empire State Building. Amazing, beautiful, impressed. Like, yeah. And I didn't know, it was so long time ago, I didn't know nobody. Before internet, well, internet was around, but not big in my life. Before Facebook, definitely. And before jazz music became so big in my life, before I met so many musicians and other jazz professionals who now make a big deal of my contact base in online and in real life too. So I just was there like a postgraduate on this holiday job kind of thing. And I was also in a Trump Tower. Yeah, I visited that one, that marble, well, it's a beautiful building and I liked it very much, honestly. But it's only recently struck me that actually Trump Tower, must have been his building, right? I didn't know that. And then the second time I heard about Donald Trump is when he basically popped up as a candidate against Hillary Clinton, and already was like a major candidate and the major, how to say, opponent in that elections. And to me, he was like a totally unknown character. Who was this guy? And since then, it was what, 2016, right? I have heard of him like every day. Shall I say every day? I mean, it's annoying to hear about someone like I don't hear about my son every day, but I hear about Trump every day, right? It's a bit strange, but this is the reality we live in. And since the day one, I heard all sort of like horrible things about him, like horrible. And now that's kind of preamble. I'm coming to the biases, you remember. Next idea. So yes, I heard horrible things about Trump. Okay. Next idea. Today I have hundreds and hundreds of connections in the United States of America through my work, through as a web designer, and first of all, maybe as a fun, but a very active one. Well, and also as a technical director of the jazz platform, All About Jazz. Probably I shouldn't mention it, but okay, I mentioned it. These ideas expressed here have nothing to do with All About Jazz, all right? And I met so many people, and through Facebook, of course, these connections here, I've inevitably been exposed to the American politics. People, I didn't want it. You dragged me in, right? I didn't care. I didn't care about politics at all. Not at all. Until Facebook, when people posted and posted and posted and posted stuff. And naturally, because most of my friends and connections are artists, people from big cities. I don't know anybody from, I don't know, Texas villages. I don't know, do they have villages, farms, ranchos? I don't know. I don't know how they live in Texas. Have no clue. I only know people from Brooklyn, you see. So, of course, I have been connected to America kind of in a vast way. Yes, like hundreds, literally. I have over 2,700 connections on Facebook and about the same on LinkedIn. And then there are other networks and services. So that's a lot of people. And even though most of these connections are only connections, let's be realistic, you can't be friends with 2,000 people. But yes, I have like dozens and dozens of people who I follow and hear from regularly. And some of them are my dear friends. Of course. So, but all of them are people of the cities, and naturally, among them, these who express their political views and which come into to my radars, they're mostly falling into that category of we often called like liberals, right? Like nobody in my network would share Fox News stuff. But I see a dozen of publications from New York Times, Washington Post, New Yorker, I don't know, The Onion, I don't know. I think it's also kind of liberal humor there. Yeah, from this kind of editions. To give you an idea, and they all, of course, bash Trump every day, like day after day for this how long? This long 4 years, yes. So that's another thing to speak about these biases. And probably naturally, because I love my friends. I have quite open politics regarding friending on Facebook and social networks. However, people who I'm in touch with, they're definitely dear to me. And then there are like real friends and or people who I adore as artists, as musicians. That's also very important. I'm a fan after all, and then you see your icons, sharing stuff. So naturally, I'm placed to actually follow this narrative and this kind of train of thought coming from them, this vector. That is, we will speak about it a little bit later. But you see what? Let's go back to some other fundamental biases of mine. Obviously, I'm not American, and I've never, no, well, I've been there once, I said about it, but I don't live there, and therefore I am interested in American everything as an outsider. However, you would hardly find a place on this planet that is not affected by American politics, that is totally independent from it. Dollar is still a very important currency, like a major exchange currency. I have had a lot of dollars in my hands through different episodes of my life. Well, not like a lot, but I mean, dollars were instrumental in Russia for a period of time, and we exchanged our rubles to dollars and back in my student years, and then in some different episodes. For example, I've never had never had in hand like Canadian dollars, or I have no clue what these Kiwi dollars from New Zealand look like. I don't know. Or what about Nigerian currency, how it's called? I have no idea. But American money, well, no. And American military is well known. Uh, my country and my city of birth, Odessa, experienced this coup that was real and not like a stage kind of theater as we saw recently in Washington. Okay, we are not talking about it right now. It was like a real coup, real swap of power, and it resulted in a civil war, and many people died, and many people died even in my native town of Odessa. And it was a result of actions by United States of America, European Union, NATO, of course, were all very active on their tiptoes, working on this on this plot. We have seen a lot of Biden. Maybe I have never heard of Trump before elections, but I know Biden very well from his adventures in Ukraine. And we've seen his son there, of course, Hunter, and we've seen Victoria Nuland and all that kind of stuff. So America is very close to where I am. And then there is a big military academy near my house in Vilnius, like literally across the street. And it also hosts now a NATO instructors and American also soldiers. I see them when I go to buy bread in my corner shop, American military professionals in my street. And I saw American planes in the sky going over my house. And now I live in Germany. I don't see a lot of American military here. It's somewhere in Ramstein, or I don't know, in some other bases, but we know Germany is heavily populated by American military personnel. That's why, for me, it's very hard to completely kind of abstract myself. This country is far away, but in a way, it's very near me. Another thing is, yes, right. And so the question is, we spoke about bias. What is interesting for me? Well, of course, US foreign policy for me is more important than their domestic policy. And of course, American wars abroad are very troublesome, plot that I follow my attention, and that is important for me. And when there are new politicians or different political forces in this society, I'm very keen to see what are they up to in terms of their foreign policy, because for me it has highest priority, higher than, for example, American healthcare. And this is okay, little off top, a great example of how people from different backgrounds can have entirely different priorities. Of course, for Americans who live so far away from their, from all these other people who maybe are not so happy to experience American influence on their soul, like for Syrians, I don't know, Libyans, whatever. For Americans, let's be realistic, it's so far away. It's almost like some never existing territories. But what is important is something like Obamacare, something that makes it possible for them to go about their health insurance and support their health and basically live and be happy at home. So for them, Obamacare, for example, overweights everything Obama's administrations did in Ukraine and in Syria and in many other 7 countries were under the hit. For someone from outside, it's the other way around, the Americans. Of course, I feel for you and I wish you best. But you know what? There are things that I consider more important than your healthcare. Sorry, guys. I mean, well, I don't have like a proper healthcare. It's all right. We will survive somehow. But let's stop bombing these poor Arabs, let's stop bombing these poor Africans, let's not aggravate with Russia and China because it can be the end for all of us. And also, it's just not nice. Right. So biases, biases, biases. And this is when I approach this problem of Trump. I come from entirely different background with different values, needs, and even personal interests in this than a lot of Americans who live, for example, right in the New York City. But similarly, someone from Texas, I don't know, whatever, these guys who vote for Trump, they also have something theirs to tell us why they do this. And skipping to a conclusion or intermediate conclusion, I would say it's super important to remember for all of us before we jump onto each other and start like, tear to shreds each other over whatever. It's important to stop for a sec and maybe try to clarify, hey, man, why? I mean, why are you supporting this? Why do you like that? How you explain your choices? And here are mine. Also explain yourself and be fair. Be fair. Say you support this candidate not because you are good and they're bad, but because you want health care. That's honest, and that makes perfect sense, by the way. So it's important to try to find and describe your own biases, your own motivations, your own grounds, why you, like where you come from when you come up to a certain belief or certain decision. So, and be honest with yourself in the first place. And then it's also very a good manner, I would say, it's politeness to try to understand another person and or other people, why they do that. And it doesn't have to be even the person across the table, it can be even a politician. They're also humans, as we established before. Try to understand why they act this way or another. No, well, you can see money are there. Well, that's fair. Imagine yourself there. If you were tempted by this much money, probably you would have the same policies like Donald Trump or whatever, like Obama. You would have been like, if you were in his shoes, you would act maybe much the same. Please remember that before you insult someone and so on. And so, right, okay, biases. Maybe I will come up with something else. Remember, it's a spontaneous one. I didn't prepare. So, and now I look at this situation, this aggravation between Democrats and who they're Republicans. Well, not really. Between all these progressives, so to speak, and these who support Trump supporters. We see this split of votes, which is literally speaking 50-50. You people like to count thousands in a country that has 350 millions of people. Well, it means basically they split up the country evenly because 1, 2, 3, I forgot what was the difference, couple percent. It's really nothing, when such huge two groups of people vote. So it was really an even split, and that means they both are equally popular. I wouldn't speak about like victory in terms of like certain idea or set of ideas prevails in America over another one. No, it's they both live together. It's not like 80% versus 20%. It's 50-50. Now, so I started about my American connections and how they introduced me into American politics via Democrat-aligned media for the most part. And instead of following with them, because before I knew nothing, they showed me something. I love these people. Hi, people. If you ever hear me, I won't call names, but I mean people who actively post this stuff from New York Times, Washington Post, who share their views on Donald Trump in their own words, who are Democrats, and maybe you can use this term liberals, though umbrella terms, let's not apply them to our friends, but it's kind of liberal camp, ideas of liberalism. I'm not meaning anything, offensive, though in these days umbrella terms are kind of dangerous and can be turned anyway. So I learned about a lot of American politics through them, and despite all the odds, I didn't follow you guys. I can't follow you. The other way around. As I joked, you guys push me into the hug of this orange, what they call him, whatever. You pushed me into Trump's camp as hard as you could all these 4 years. For a simple reason, people, because I could see a lot of hypocrisy, a lot of lies, a lot of manipulations, a lot of kind of cheating and double standards. And above everything, hypocrisy. This is something I really can't stand, when you when you climb higher moral grounds and higher intellectual grounds, and then you go lower and sometimes even lower than your opponent. Of course, if you attack from behind, you have an advantage. But if you say that you are adept of chivalry, or what it's called, when you respect the codex of an officer and you are morally perfect, you simply can't do that. Yes, of course, it's a lost opportunity, but you lose it. No, Democrats would never lose a chance to hit you from behind. This is what I've seen all through all these 4 years, reading mostly headlines, but sometimes also quickly scanning the articles in these once respected newspapers that turned into some propaganda racks, honestly. So biases. It's very difficult, we are not objective. We are dancing around and trying to make up our mind about what's going on here. But there are such things as common sense, logic, morality. For example, I hear about this army of countless thousands of these white supremacists with guns who are super dangerous and who are aggressive like hell, who are fascists, basically. Well, this was said many times over, and they're racists, of course. Why so few people were killed? I mean, just, lots of evil people with guns, what they do? They kill people, right? I don't see victims. Well, in Ukraine, I see victims. In Syria, I see victims. In Libya, I see victims. I don't see victims in America. Yeah, of course, there are the school shootings, but that's a bit different thing. Why? I think people are much better than we are made to think. People respect the law. People can control their anger. People possess certain discipline, People are better than we are made to think about them. If they were such reckless idiots and total morons and totally deplorables. I'm not sure I know what the meaning of this word, but it doesn't sound very good. And they are all like heavily armed. And I see posts about these armed idiots, every day on Facebook. That's why I've never been in America like that. I mean, not counting that brief visit, so I don't know. But this is what I read. Why there are no bloodshed? Well, maybe they're not such an idiots, right? and things like that. This riot, this coup attempt of a coup, is of course super funny when America spends what $750 billion for defense and they can't defend couple buildings from a crowd. I can't believe that, honestly. Of course, police somehow cooperated, right? Well, why would they cooperate? What happened inside? We saw these pictures of people who respectfully walking along the designated paths inside the building. They didn't vandalize anything. Didn't you had to see what they did in Ukraine when they broke through and got control over government buildings. That would make a very good, example of how a real crazy and hateful crowd acts when it gets through some resistance, and breaks into the government buildings. Nothing like that was in America. It was like a kindergarten excursion. Honestly, they scream coup, attempted coup. That's ridiculous. It just doesn't look like that. And yes, no, well, there are what, 3 people killed, I heard. Well, it's nothing. Well, sorry for them, but it's nothing. When we talk about crowds of armed people doing some action, people die in hundreds at least. Nothing like that happened, thanks goodness. So there were no violent coup, and there were no violent riot, and there were no much to talk about, except that was a very interesting situation over there. Well, but now you see, I haven't prepared, and it's bad actually. I beg your pardon for that. Now I am giving you my story, but I promised to speak about biases. So yes, the bias is basically very simple. I don't trust Democrats. I don't trust democratic aligned media. And maybe it's my bias because if they publish something valid, I can't distinguish it from garbage. But they posted so much garbage that I'm just helpless. I don't know when they post good stuff and when it's not, manipulation. And I can't. I don't always trust my friends because, well, I realize they also have their biases and they, unlike me, consume tons of this information product, and I can see how at least a big part of it is not truth, but they consume it. And sometimes I have ways to check truth or not because, well, I'm not so sure about what's going on between these crowds there in the streets of America because all I have are reports from there. But for example, when it comes to this moral clash between horrible and disgusting and totally immoral Trump and a beautiful Joe Biden, then I can tell you that's total garbage. Even if I had to make a pick out of this idea of a lesser evil, honestly, I don't know who I would prefer in that sense. There's a good chance it would have been still Donald Trump, even after everything we have seen. Because I know for sure that Biden is a criminal who belongs to the jail for what he has done in Ukraine alone. But the list of his heroic deeds is mile long, and it circulates the alternative web. I've seen it many. I don't remember honestly something about that Patriot Act surveillance program that he sketched out like decades ago before it became mainstream. The censorship stuff. He always worked to implement that stuff, and he did some corruption in China, I read also, but I don't. I know about Ukrainian example is like this. It's screaming to anybody who cares. But again, I see how lots of people just don't want to see that because they want to just get rid of Trump. Probably I will be wrapping up. Yes, this part about biases didn't go very well, I must admit, because it's difficult. All I want to say is that my views of things defined by certain realities of my life and certain knowledge, and I compare things, I analyze what I hear, and but obviously my analysis is not perfect and my knowledge is microscopic. I wouldn't say this word incomplete. It's microscopic, it's just rudimental, and live and watch what's going on. I only spot like very big events. Yes, and perhaps, you know what, I will add something to beef up this talk a little bit. I will say a few words about priorities. Priorities actually help because life is made of big things and small things. Some things are like screaming and big like Mountain Everest, and some are microscopic almost. So when I hear about the corruption of some politician, to me, this is a microscopic thing. Of course, they're all corrupt. Is it news for someone, or someone was so naive thinking it can be different? Of course, what is corruption? There is power, there are money, there is the power to make decisions, there are money to buy decisions in your favor. That's it. One, how to say, flows into another. It's like corruption is a mechanism of monetization power, basically. It's very natural. It's like taxation. It cannot be different, and it exists under every rule in every society always. It just has different forms depending on the society, on the culture, on economic realities, and so on, you know. But of course, corruption is there. Corruption, when I hear about corruption of Trump, I want to cry because it's so silly. In America, corruption has been, political corruption has been legalized. I don't know when, but ages ago, when basically money were officially allowed to buy political, I don't know, presence, what they do, advertisement, when money were allowed in politics. And basically it became a competition between candidates who can raise more money. And when you raise more money, you usually win because you basically get more attention. Like if I spent like couple grand for to boost, as they call it, boost this video, I would have today not two people, but maybe 200 people watching me right now. Would it make my video better? I doubt so. One person. Ciao. Would it make my video better? I don't think so, but at least, yes, I would have bigger reach, right? And if I had a big donor, I would probably work hard and maybe hire the stylist, you know, and maybe like rented an office and maybe improved, yeah, and also a good microphone, and maybe would improve the quality of this video too. So yeah, and would be even more appealing to my viewers in that sense. So of course, money huge in politics, in American politics in that sense, and corruption is in the open, totally visible, but millions of Americans seem not to see it anyway. I don't know how it happens. I asked them, but nobody can explain me. They go into some very crafty details, and political process is very complicated with lots of terminology. American politics is like, oh my goodness, I try to understand something. It's impossible for an outsider. It's harder than to understand this American football. Well, I think everything is very big and complex in America, everything. So politics is impossible to understand. But I mean, it's when you go into details, but you know, you don't need to go into details. It's not my job. I'm not paid for it. Just sit down, you know, look at it and see, all right, it's a competition of donors and it's all one big corruption scheme by definition. And I'm not interested. Trump is corrupt. Biden is corrupt. Well, they all are, of course. That's the job. So these are little things compared to big things. What is big for me? I can tell you. People should not die violently. They should die only of natural cases, like, for example, of corona when they're 96. It's normal to die of corona or whatever when you are old and already lived your life. But dying in the prime time or as a child for no reason whatsoever, well, there cannot be reason for that anyway. That's horrible. War is the biggest evil and the first and only priority that should occupy everybody's mind. Every decent person should care about it, think about it, and do anything they can to stop it, to stop their government, no matter where you live, from engaging in military conflicts, opposing militarization of the society whenever you are. And of course, in America, it's super sharp thing since their military budget is by far the biggest in the world, and their military presence is omnipresent, and they wage wars on and kill in a sense in industrial scale, on an industrial scale. I think I read figures like 20-25 millions by some estimates were killed by US foreign policy and Americans directly since the World War II. That's not good, guys. And who does it? I can tell you, politicians, right? But who elect these politicians? You people, you are complicit. You are complicit if you vote for these criminals, you see? I don't know how it works. Maybe it's not so direct, but there has to be somehow, at least a tiny bit of this guilt on you. I've never said that before, but it's a spontaneous speech. So yeah, I think so. And that's why it creates a bit of a problem for me personally when I sometimes, when someone is very passionately supports someone like Hillary Clinton, and I think she needs to go straight to the electric chair. It's a bit difficult, right? So I said about big things and small things. So this is the big thing: militarization, military, war, killing, murder, destruction. And it's a source of most other problems, surprisingly. They speak about environmental. Well, war destroys whole continents, well, whole regions, countries. And of course, it's bad for environment. It has a very big CO2 emission, when, the rockets destroy the city. It's a dirty business, and they also kill trees and little cats. War is evil, and it's deadly for the environment. When they speak about refugees, it's even funny, these people care about refugees and vote for war criminals. How does it even work together in their brains? Wars create refugees. Why refugees? Because your country or your politics destroys other countries and people run away to save their lives. This is where refugees come from. They're not coming from like another planet or from nowhere. They are our neighbors whose houses you burn. Well, your government, your country, I don't know, people you vote for. So it's you in the end. Don't vote for war criminals, and there will be no refugees. It's a very nice solution. What else? I don't know, refugees, or sexism, domestic violence. I think you will find source among major sources of every social evil. You will find militarism, war, and injustice that creates it, that creates this fucked up spirit, that makes it all normal, normalizes this. This is the source of various very different issues that sometimes maybe look totally unrelated, but remove the guns, reduce military budget like 10 times, And you will be surprised how literally everything will start like flourishing, like literally everything will be improved straight away. Suicides, I don't know, domestic violence, shootings at school, I don't know, anything. Everything will be much, much better if military budget is reduced. Soldiers are taken home from very, very remote places where they don't belong and have no business whatsoever to be. It will be very good for the country, for the society. So in the end, what I'm saying, it might sound at times very anti-American, but it's actually pro-American. I have lots of friends. I started from that in this country, so I care, and I definitely care for them. I don't want them to suffer, and this is the way to go about it. Unite against militarism of the United States of America in this sense, yes, but it also applies to every other country that has, well, even my tiny Lithuania is struggling to boost their military budget. Why a country like that even needs military? That's ridiculous. They should have like, I don't know, couple of thousand policemen. That's totally fine. No need to have military for a tiny country surrounded by much bigger neighbors. If the world collapses, they won't defend themselves anyway. So it's totally ridiculous. But anyway, so priorities matter, priorities. And in this imperfect world, you can't fix everything. You can't get everything to be perfect. It's impossible. You can't even know all your problems. You don't know where it hurts, you know. It's like, but here it hurts a lot, and then everywhere it's kind of maybe also. But it's hard to keep an eye on every aspect of reality. Well, hard, impossible. But let's concentrate on big things, on really big things. Let's focus on one single problem that is problem of all problems. That's militarism. That's war. That's expansion. Attempt to expansion at the cost of others. Um, that's, I think, a very important thing. You remember, I remember now, this blog is called Citizens Duty, and I promise that's my idea and goal to make every talk from this position of what it takes to be a good citizen. So what should we do, you know, to be good citizens? Because there's a lot of talks about it. For example, near these elections, there was like, we need to, I don't know, vote blue no matter who. We need to, well, obviously, there was a big slice of the society that voted for red, right? And then there were, among these progressives, there was a discussion, should we try to go for the Green Party, for the third party, or, but it's impossible, it's distractions, we're stealing votes from Democrats, which is not good, or maybe we should boycott these elections. And that was also like a very big debate, but well, very big debate among the tiny minority of people. Well, maybe not so tiny, looking at how only a part of Americans voted and a very big part was passive. So maybe it's a majority, in fact, this quiet majority that boycotted the elections. Maybe if it was a total majority, the elections would have been simply illegitimate, you know. But I mean, what is it? What does it take to be a good citizen? I imagine it starts from outlining priorities and trying to figure out what is the most important thing and trying to at least focus on that, and don't be dragged into the swamp of like little kind of petite things that are insignificant literally, and remembering thousands of names of people who don't deserve that. Really, you don't remember all the great musicians, why should you remember all these congress people? Just don't, just all right, I mean, right. And yes, so perhaps a little bit like overall, so what was this whole chunk about today. It came up very long because usually when I talk without script, just go, I can go for hours. But sorry, I managed that. So the first like 20 minutes were quite tight, and it was about media bias. First of all, about bias, just bias. We all are biased. We all are limited, little, tiny creatures with very limited reach, very limited access to information, and very kind of even limited ability to process and comprehend what we know, but we know nothing. So that's one thing. We have our interests, our natural, like where we incline. So we have our biases, built-in biases, if you wish. Some of them even come from biology. For example, if you are a girl or you are a boy, it matters. In fact, it matters too. In some particular situations, it matters a lot, obviously. Or if you are big or you are small, also very important sometimes. It can even affect your choices as a citizen. Well, you need to be imaginative to make up such a situation, but I think if we put a little bit of thinking in it, it's possible. Yeah. So we are all biased, and so are people who make news, who basically inform us. They are also biased, and they pursue their agenda, and they have their agenda why they inform us. So that's naturally bias. And then we spoke about media that has basically a lot of different goals as a activity in the most general sense, and these goals have nothing to do or little to do with telling truth. And it should be very clearly understood. People should not be kind of, under wrong impression that these newspapers here with beautiful logos are to tell us what things are. They can tell us in many cases because it's good for them, and they cannot. Depends on where is their profit. And now, as a conclusion of conclusions, so what do? We do, I imagine, a few things. First of all, we are not able to get rid of our biases, but we can be aware of the fact. We should be, we must be, if we are intellectually kind of honest people, we should realize our views are not objective, they're subjective. It's important, number one. And then we can try, when we review certain issue, certain dispute, certain debate, we should really try to see where our biases are, where do they come from, and we can actually outline at least major ones. It's very important too, and that will allow us to be honest about our thinking, about our opinions. We will understand, yes, I sympathize this guy, you know what, because he is black and I am black, or because he is Jew and I am Jew, or because she is a woman and I am a woman, for example. Or I sympathize this guy because he is just like me, a white European guy, for example. And for some reason, I think it's important for me. Maybe. Well, tell it to yourself, be honest. And I sympathize this guy because he is communist, or because he is talking about because he is nationalist, and I am also nationalist. But tell why, what makes you nationalist? Because I want to preserve my community intact. I don't want people of different backgrounds to flood it and totally dissolve. I value my community and my traditional way of living, and I want to protect it. So I push for a politician who declares these values. Or the opposite, I really love diversity and I kind of really want it to be like international place, meeting cross point and this melting pot of different cultures. I love that, and this is the future. So I push for a politician who does that. But then try to go even deeper. Why do you do that? Things like that. Self-reflect, analyze, and try to avoid terrible, um, misfitting in your views, which is constantly happening. You can't be a libertarian. You can't be for the freedom of speech and applaud deplatforming that people, who are on the other spectrum, on the other side of political spectrum. You can't do that. It's hypocrisy. It's bad, actually. It's bad. No, probably you don't understand, but it's bad. You can't do this. You either you can say let's deplatform, let's censor, let's purge, because I think it's the way to go. People who are bad, people who spread wrong ideas don't deserve to be presented on the media platforms. Say that, all right. But then we will check your Facebook wall and see what you posted like 3 years ago, or even 2 years ago, or even last month, and compare. Didn't I see that Voltaire quote on your wall? I disagree with you, but I will die for your right to express your opinion. Voltaire, attributed to Voltaire. It's actually some woman, I forgot her name. I checked that quote. I think you posted that one, and now you are applauding censorship. This is hypocrisy. If you have been perfect in your record of being kind of a totalitarian, it's totally okay with me. I think oftentimes that I am myself. Yeah, I would censor out like a lot of things from this world, probably. Yeah, why not? Yeah. So, but it's another conversation we will be talking about later, about censorship. Like it will be one of the coming programs. I imagine that's another crucial thing is to remember that people around you, people across the table, they're people in the first. They're not liptards, they're not deplorables, they're not some sort of offensive nicknames, obviously. They're not idiots in mass. They are, some of them don't dig. I can accept that, and it's often the case. Moreover, human intelligence is a very strange and interesting thing. Sometimes it is like, well, I mean, it's multifaceted. The same human specimen can demonstrate amazing smart wits, in certain aspect, and be totally dull, in some other areas, totally deaf to certain types of knowledge or information, and then very smart, very open to something else. So human mind is very interesting and fluid, and lots of people who are very, very intelligent sometimes do very silly mistakes here and there in some areas where they're not so strong. And people who oftentimes regarded as kind of primitives, but they can demonstrate amazing wits, yes, and be very actually thoughtful. So it's complex. But anyway, I mean, no matter what you think, you don't have to respect every opinion, but I imagine you have to respect every human. Moreover, it's not everywhere, but if you live in this democratic society, in this society of with the values of liberal, what it's called, yes, democracy, then yes, you have to respect every person. I imagine this is the very foundation of the democracy. If people, democracy is when people basically speak and accept each other's choices. If they don't speak, the whole thing is going to rub off. Yeah, it that just doesn't hold together. Then some other mechanisms become efficient. So you have to respect your neighbor and your colleague. And of course, in this recent conflict, we see how these Trump supporters kind of demonstrate total disrespect to the choice of American nation who elected Biden, and they try to object these results of the elections. And in that sense, they are criticized for disrespect of the majority of Americans. But I must say it's more tricky than that, because over these 4 years, I've seen countless publications and memes and posts that were very insulting of these people, coming from Democrat camp and from the media and from liberal community. And in that sense, I would say things are not going very well with mutual respect. The polarization of the society reached that level when this idea is barely life, and it's kind of, it will require lots of work to kind of mend the nation together. I imagine, if it is still possible, if there will be leadership that could do that, but I don't think so, because we can see Biden barely won. I mean, barely by a little margin. So the only way he can stay in power, I imagine, is to continue rely on his support base, and this is what he will do most likely. He, and I mean not he, but them, people who put him into that chair, the force that created them. So they will continue this divisive rhetoric, and they will continue alienated the other part of the nation. So at least this is what normally happens. We will see if there possible a more positive scenario there. But for us, for citizens, and now I talk to my friends, and if you watch this video, you are probably my friend, even if you don't know yet about it. So I would say your disagreement and whatever is the second thing, but your being citizens of the same country, it obliges you to respect your kind of neighbor. It's like colleagues in business, basically, in the business of democracy. A Democrat must respect a Democrat. A citizen of a democratic country should respect another citizen, no matter what views he has. If certain views are kind of incompatible with the ideas of democracy, they should be then probably jailed, sentenced. No, I mean, there should be a proper legal procedure that would describe them and define as not acceptable, something like this. Oh, well, I'm not sure how it should work, but I'm sure there are people who know. Well, okay. And then obviously, I think that I said already, but I will reply it again one more time. Yes, people, diversify your sources, your media sources, your information sources. Try to rely on media as little as possible, but if you do, try to draw from different sources. And of course, in time of serious civil confrontation, it's important to hear both sides. And as I also mentioned today earlier, right now, today, I'm not talking today, a quick headline scan of Fox News gave me a much more favorable picture compared to what I saw at Washington Post. It looks like this conservative media, right, is now kind of being more sensible than the drunk of victory Democrats. But in any case, you want to continue looking up them. But ideally, of course, there's such a thing as alt media, which is being hidden from the eyes, banned from social platforms. We all hear about our friend Donald Trump being deplatformed, but nobody, well, that Alex, I forgot his name. There was this strange guy who was a bit of a force. But for the most part, this wonderful and totally harmless but very honest alternative media websites simply disappear from Facebook, from Twitter without any notice, being uh, losing their rank in Google and being basically hidden from the eye. It takes a special research to find them. But if you are curious, you just ask me. I will connect you with people. I will find myself and give you the whole bunch of writers who will add colors to your otherwise black and white picture of the world, so to speak. So diversify and listen to the opponents across, the border. Listen to Russia Today, of course, and Sputnik. Absolutely must listen in the modern world. If you think that you are interested in politics, if you don't, okay, just go play music. I don't know, walk, play sports, whatever you do, watch telly, but if you're interested in politics, Russia Today must watch. Okay, thank you very much. I hear some fatigue in my chords. I'm not a vocalist, so singing and not a teacher, singing like this for 1.5 almost hour is a little bit tiring. But I decided I will go loose today, no more limits, because when I tried to do it short, well, it was short and I like it long. I see you next time. I'm not sure yet what will be the topic, but this blog Citizens Duty is going to be around, hopefully, and I'm going to cover the whole big bunch of subjects. I started from information bias. I guess there will be yet another. Yes, the next one is naturally censorship. Yeah, the next probably couple weeks, and we will talk about censorship. I will bring my rich experience as someone who has spent half of his life in this totalitarian prison of Soviet Union. So I will show you what life looks like behind the bars. Not as bad as you might think, yes. All right. Ciao, ciao. Bye bye.